All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. It's the 53rd in TeamLease's series of webinars, and today's topic is formalization of workforce. For the uninitiated, it's important for us to break this down into three questions: what, why, and how. To begin with, what is formalization? Then, why should organizations go for this? And thirdly, importantly, how should they go about doing this? Now, what's formalization? It simply means moving informal or unorganized workforce into the formal workforce. Now, again, what does that mean? Now, informal or unorganized workforce refers to those employees who may be working as full-time employees in a certain organization, but may not necessarily be paid as per minimum wages, may not be getting any statutory benefits like PF, ESI, stat bonus, gratuity, and so on and so forth. Now, such employees are all over the supply chain, right from factories, warehouses, and all the way through to the salespeople who are working in the distribution channel and frontline promoters who are directly facing the end consumers. Secondly, why should organizations go for formalization? That is, moving such workers in the informal space to the formal space. Interesting data point. Approximately 90% of all the workforce in India is supposed to be in the informal/unorganized space. It's only the 10% which is in the formal space, and all of us are a part of that, lucky enough to be a part of that 10%. Now, coming back, why should organizations formalize such employees? What's the value in it? Now, TeamLease as an organization, we have captured this using what we call as the GAPS framework. It's an acronym, GAPS, where G stands for removal of ghost employees, A stands for the possibility that formalization may reduce attrition, and P, wherein because of improved control you could boost productivity, and S, meaning that formalization provides social security benefits to these employees. Right? Now, thirdly, if we are convinced that we should go about formalizing the workforce, how should we go about doing it? There are many legitimate ways of doing it. It could be employing them as gig workers, or as contract workers, or as apprentices, or through permanent employment. All of them are equally legit. There is no question about it. Now, organizations are redefining strategies to align people, processes, and technology to navigate through the headwinds of unproductive outcomes. So even the government of India is actually focused on formalization, and that's clearly evident in the draft labor codes that we have seen so far and will soon be implemented. How can formalization really lead to productive outcomes is what we will be exploring today. And joining us to share their expert views on the same, we have four elite speakers from the HR fraternity. To begin with, we have Mr. Manas Martha, who is an HR leader, currently working with India's largest kitchenware company, TTK Prestige, as a senior vice president and HR head. With over 25 years of experience in this domain, he has anchored several transformational HR initiatives in the areas of organizational design, leadership development, talent management, culture building, performance management, employer branding, and industrial relations. Also, he was selected as one of the top 100 most influential HR leaders in India by World HRD Congress in 2017. It's a pleasure having you on board with us today in this webinar, Mr. Manas. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Bala. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Rajesh Sahay, who's the Senior Vice President and Head HR for Wipro Consumer Care and Lighting. He is responsible for the global HR operations spanning 19 countries and 8,500 employees. He has over 23 years of experience across industry domains and has exposure in M&A deals both in India and cross-border deals involving multiple countries. He loves to train and teach and regularly participates in in-house leadership development programs. His work motto, keep it simple, drive it hard. Well said, sir, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We have Ms. Vani Manukonda also, who's the Director HR at Harsco Corporation. She's an accomplished result-focused HR leader with over 20 years of experience across all aspects of human capital management. She has expertise in organization design and development, OD interventions, career enhancement frameworks through innovative tools and techniques. And she is an ambitious HR leader who appreciates and achieves stretched goals. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am.
Thank you, Bala.
So to begin with, I just wanted, the elite panelists' opinion on what are the critical considerations for organizations as they create their future roadmap with new workforce models, the same models that I just named a minute ago. There is gig workforce model, there is apprentices, freelance, contract, casual employees, and of course, core employees, right? So, what are the various aspects that being HR leaders you would be considering as the ideal mix, and how would you really go about creating the future roadmap with these combinations? So, to begin with, I would love to have Mr. Manas's opinion on this.
Bala, thank you so much for having me here. Pleasure to be in front of your audience. Well, I was just reading a research paper conducted by Niti Aayog, which used to be Planning Commission earlier, and now it's been called Niti Aayog. I was going through it a few days back. This gig workforce, if you look at the gig economy, is gaining going strength to strength. I think if you look at the non-farm income, the non-farm sector, today close to about 7.5 to 8 million has been estimated at the gig workforce which we have right now, which is poised to grow to nearly about 25 to 30 million by 2030. That's the projection done by Niti Aayog based on some research papers. Now, we all know about gig workers, which typically consist of two types of workers, which is the platform workers as well as the non-platform workers. And so it's something which organizations can, will be finding it very difficult to avoid these workforce going forward. They are going to be a mainstream, they're going to be a key part of our composition of our workforce going forward. So if you look at, without getting into I'm sure that your audience would be knowledgeable about the gig workers, so I'm not getting into that domain. Having said that, let me tell you, since you asked me a question with regard to how we are planning to, what have we done so far and how we are planning to, build these workforce modules. Let me tell you, I think, being and one more thing, let me tell you before I get into address that question. The 4 key industry sectors which has been predicted to have the maximum number of gig workforce are construction, manufacturing, textiles. Then you will have, these e-commerce companies. These are the companies these are the sectors which will have maximum gigable workforce going forward. Now, the other thing is retail, of course, because retail is the footprint of retail, as we all know, is expanding, always expanding. So our company, TTK Prestige, which I belong to, we are in the manufacturing sector, though we are in consumer durables, our core DNA is manufacturing. So manufacturing and retail, that's been our strength. So if you look at, the way we have structured our workforce so far, it's actually evolving, let me tell you, like there is nothing cast in stone. It's an evolving organizational structure. But having said that, as you rightly stated in your intro, the workforce composition today is a mix of the formal workforce and the informal workforce. Now, the formal workforce, which we all know, the informal workforce are the one which typically are the ones wherein we don't have a formal employment relationship between the employer and the employee. Today, if you look at the apprentices, then we have got these NEEM trainees. Then we have got, there's a large number of workforce in our sector, which is basically is what we call as the extended army, which is the customer support. There are service technicians who have been spread across pan-India, and then, we call them as authorized service centers. Though they are service centers, typically they're a one-man army or 2 people maximum at best. So that's a large workforce. Then you have got the sales promoters who have been there directly front-ending, our products to the end consumer, being based at all the large format stores or the organized retail outlets that we call as. The third element, which is the large number of retail workforce that we have, because we ourselves have got roughly around 650 retail, our own, franchisee FOFO retail outlets or COCO retail outlets. So I'm sure there are about close to another 2,500 to 3,000 people spread across both tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 cities. That's another key segment of the workforce. The other one is the contractual labor, those who are based in our factories, for which we have directly though we don't have a direct employment relationship with them, we actually hire them through the manpower contractors. So these are the various segments of the labor that we have, or rather the workforce that we have today. Now, since you asked me a question, what is formal and what can be done formal, what can be formalized? I will tell you, I think everything can be formalized, frankly speaking. There's nothing which cannot be formalized. But are we ready for the formalization? Yes or no? We are definitely going towards that. But as an organization, let me tell you, in my organization, what we are doing is that the key consideration for formalizing these workforce is basically to have an inclusive agenda. That's very important. I think all companies, all the entire sector industry now is focusing more on inclusive agenda. That's number one. Number two, I think we need to bring them into the social security net. That's very important. The third element, which let me tell you is very important, which we feel as a key consideration set if we formalize the workforce, is basically the skilling of this workforce. That's very important. Because, like these people, there is no entry barriers, we get them on board, but how do we skill them? How do we upskill them, make them employable? Is very, very important. So that's another key consideration that we have. We are looking at. The fourth element we are looking at is since talent today is with all the COVID, post-COVID, it's much more, it can work anywhere and everywhere. You don't have those kind of issues and challenges which we had about a few years back. I think COVID has exposed that point. Now, there are certain things wherein people, these employees, these gig workers can certainly be employed anywhere. So I think that provides flexibility. The fifth element, let me tell you, is the technology. I think it has really helped in terms of the app-based technology. For example, let me give you an example of the service technicians we have. We are not an e-commerce company, let me tell you. But having said that, the service technicians today, there are about close to 2,500 of them pan-India. Now, these people are typically operated through our app-based service modules, and we don't have a direct employment relationship with them, but they are very critical for our success, let me tell you, because they are the one who are actually front-ending to the customers in terms of, to reach to that last mile in terms of catering the customer service. So I think, these are, so one is basically to summarize, it's basically to drive an inclusive agenda, and of course, formalizing the workforce, bringing them to social network and skilling them so that they become productive. They will not only become productive for us, they become productive for the industry as well. So those are the elements that we are looking at, while planning to formalize the workforce. Having said that, almost 10 to 15% of our workforce today is formalized, let me tell you. In terms of 10 to 15% of our workforce, are gig workers, okay? And out of which, we are already have a plan to formalize at least about half of them, let me tell you. And I very strongly believe, maybe next 5 years, this 10 to 15% of the gig workforce would actually increase up to at least 25%, if not more. So, therefore, you cannot have a 25% of your workforce who are not formalized. That's not a good situation to be in. So therefore, I think if not all, we will certainly look at in terms of formalizing at least 10 to 15% of those 25% of the workforce, which is typically in thousands. So to make them productive, who can help us in terms of achieving our desired objectives. So that's the kind of landscape that we are looking at.
Wonderfully put, sir. Thank you so much. I think that's a great 5-point plan to have: inclusivity, social security, skilling, flexibility in terms of locations and stuff, and then using technology for more productivity.
Absolutely.
Sounds great. And also very happy to hear that you're looking to formalize a bigger fraction or a bigger proportion of your workforce going forward. Absolutely. Thanks so much for that. So moving on to Mr. Rajesh Sahay. So same question, sir. What are the critical considerations for organizations as they create their future roadmap with a mix of various new workforce models, gig, apprenticeship, contract workforce, freelance, casual, core, etc.? Your views on that, sir?
Thanks for having me here. Pleasure to be here. We all are aware that in India, the informal sector or the unorganized labor is much higher than the organized labor, right? As far as organized labor is concerned, any reputed company or a professional company would ensure that they are formalized, right? So even if you're hiring through a third-party source, right, you will ensure that all the social security compliance and other things are done on that. I see it as a little differently on this informal sector or the unorganized sector. Just look at, take an example that the society we live in, right, or the houses we live in. We typically employ a housemaid. We probably have a driver. We have a gardener. We probably have a car cleaner. We have a security guard manning your township or the apartment complex which you have. Now, these are so-called unorganized or informal workers, right? But I did an analysis that the housemaid who works in our house and the amount of compensation we pay for a 1 to 1.5 hour job, and she or he does it in 7-8 houses per day. How much does it add up to? Okay. And when you have a live-in maid, right? So it is now standard that apart from 12 months, the 13th month has to be a bonus. And you have to pay for the travel for their hometown and back, right? So from a minimum wages point of view, it is now, and I heard recently that because of the both the spouses working, right, the maids are charging premium pricing for the timings which you need, like 6:30 to 7:30 or 8, right? That's the time you want your work to be finished, and when you head for office, there's a premium pricing for that, or in the evening time when you come, when you're back home, you're looking for that. So for them, it is about getting the maximum cash in hand. Right? Now, the social infrastructure which we need to create. So, say take Ayushman Bharat, right, which is the healthcare part which we do. So we educate those people that why don't you enroll and become that member of that Ayushman Bharat. They are not very keen on ESI or PF because they find it very cumbersome. What happens if I change this house, and so forth. So there is a need for a formal mechanism to come up in terms of, and lots of education is required, and there is a complete mobility in terms of that. If I am working here and if I made a contribution to PF and I've moved employer or become a gig worker or gone to some other sector, the access is not denied, and the bureaucracy or the process complexity should not impact, and that is why they are least concerned in creating that kitty for that, because they think that it's a lost money, so on and so forth. So that's the framework which we have to work on, that this large base of unemployment, informal sector, understand the benefit of that. So whether it's NPS, ESI, PF, Ayushman Bharat, Jan Dhan Yojana, which gives you a life insurance and so on and so forth, if packaged correctly and educated, of course, there could be an element of cost going up for those employers, but it will help in formalizing those sectors and ensuring that people get a decent work earning and a lifestyle which all their 360-degree view is taken care of. So that is something, a big mammoth exercise which the government, the employers, informal employers, and organizations will have to do to ensure that this has been covered. For large organizations, obviously you have your permanent workforce. There is absolutely no problem because the compliance and other part, you're way above that. So there's no issues on that. Whenever you have a third-party worker or a casual, an apprentice and so on and so forth, by being compliant 100%, right, you are ensuring that the basic things are definitely ensured and they are not taken for a ride or they are shortchanged on that part of it. And with the awareness and the opportunity going up. So it's like at one point of time, while talking to a petrol pump owner, was facing shortage of workers because they chose to become an Ola and Uber driver because that was more money making, right? Then with COVID, the Ola Uber part did not become very remunerative for them. So they thought that to be a warehouse operator in Amazon or a Flipkart one is a much better option to work on that. So those kind of sectoral shifts will continue to happen, and they are getting that money. So last week I was in US, and most of the places it was written that, including Heathrow Airport, where I was transitioning, that because of shortage of workers, okay, please bear with us. They're trying to limit the number of people who travel or transit through Heathrow. And one of the hotels wrote a very interesting thing. I took a picture of that also, which said that we are running short of workers. Please respect the people who have shown up. Okay, and be tolerant on that. So that's what is happening in US, that there's shortage of all the Mexico workers have left that place and they don't want to come back because they have got a better opportunity working on that. So this is how two-pronged approach has to be taken, that the mobility of workers have also gone up, including sectoral. So earlier, if you were a mason, you will born as a mason and you'll die as a mason, right? There's nothing which you can think of that. Today, you can become an Ola Uber driver, you can become a Swiggy delivery boy or a girl, you can move to Amazon, you can become a warehouse operation, or you can come back and work in a factory. So that opportunities have also gone up, and hence the infrastructure, which is more from a social security point of view, need to keep pace with that and ensure that they don't have any worry of that. Otherwise, they will just go for maximization of cash and leave it at that. So that's what my view would be.
Sir, wow. I mean, seriously, that was very insightful. I mean, interestingly, you mentioned that maids are now charging surge pricing, right? That's owing to more awareness and they want to maximize cash in hand. Also, the other interesting point that you mentioned is that they're not really very keen on ESI, PF benefits because they just feel that that money is lost. Is that because of lack of awareness about the actual benefits about ESI, PF, or they feel that while, of course, it is beneficial, but accessing that money is such a pain that maybe it is not worth it? What do you think is the reason between the two?
Both. So one is lack of awareness, definitely.
Right.
The second is about to harness the benefit of that scheme. So if it's like right to education, right? If they said that right to education is there, and your child, if you are below a certain economic status and below, the schools are supposed to provide you with education and give admission and so on and so forth. But there's a huge challenge because the schools are not open to accept those children. Same goes for Ayushman Bharat, where that you do that enrollment, but if you go to Manipal Hospital or any other hospital, there's a huge challenge on that. Now, it's not that Manipal Hospital don't want to extend that benefit to them, but they say the payments don't come from the government. Okay, so that's the other challenge on that. If you enroll an ESI part of it, great, but then access to the nearest hospital and the kind of facility which you get is another issue on that. So it's a mix of both. So if that infrastructure is built well, people will definitely see the benefit of that and start utilizing that. So it's not a switch on, switch off situation, but in a very graded manner, you will have to build that ecosystem.
Absolutely, sir. I think as you rightly said, the last statement that you made was the social infra needs to keep up with people's needs. And if that happens, I think why not? That'll actually create a demand or a push for formalization from the ground level up, rather than employers trying to do it. Great. Perfect, sir. Thanks so much for your views again. So same question, ma'am, to you, Ms. Vani Manukonda. If you can share your thoughts on what are the critical considerations for organizations as they create their future roadmap with newer workforce models such as gig apprentices, freelance, contract, casual, and of course, core employees.
Thanks, Bala. So I represent, the industry which is into services, as well as because we are spread across in 40 countries. So we have our shared services and the software development also in India. So while we are doing these two, it has given us a lot of eye-opening, especially, because of the COVID and these kind of things. And there's been a lot of digital transformation also that we are undergoing. So given that we took it, from we had insights into two different sectors. One is the manufacturing sector. We have the workers, the blue collared, and then we have the sophisticated intellectual workers, that is in the IT and the shared services. So given that if we were focusing, so what we said is, hey, taking stock of the things now. So what is the kind of gig workers we have? So what are the different types of contracts that we have? And when we did a deep dive into these kind of contracts, we also said, hey, what is the output based on the type of contracts which we have with these employees? So that was a kind of a mapping that we had done. And then, it didn't come as a surprise to us, but it was, the more secure that the workers were, the quality of work, the output, the productivity was better. So that's when we said, hey, these are the pockets that we need to invest in. So if I were to talk about the blue collar workforce, which are on the in the factories, in the plants over there, working with these hot furnaces and this kind of stuff. So we had a lot of other contractors with our because we are the service providers, so with our clients. So name the big steel manufacturers, that is the JSWs, the JSLs, the Tatas, the steel plants, government steel plants. And during the COVID, we haven't laid off a single of our blue collar. So that is what actually gave us a lot of leeway. The reason is, in addition to the PF, the ESI, these kind of things, we also gave them over and above that health insurance, which they could use both for their employee, for the individual employee and the families, extended families. So this gave them a lot of motivation to stay back. And that was the good word that spread out in the market. And while we were doing this, also, there have been curbs, because I'm sure the entire world has been facing this downfall because of the COVID. So during that, hey, there were curbs on our capital investments, then on how we hire people, but still the work was being impacted, though. So given that, we thought, hey, we need to think more innovatively. And that is when we had this apprentice program. Yes, it's very popular, and it is a mandate by the government. That is the 2.5% of our workforce that we need to take them. However, there was this other angle of the CSR to it, where you hire anybody above 2.5% to that of 15%. So you could cover them under your CSR. So that was very encouraging to us. And yes, it was not easy for us, because there have been varied government bodies, be it the NABs, the NATs, the NEEMs. So which was more ideal for us? So we started getting people through this kind of an arrangement with the government. And when we started getting these, students who were studying in their engineering and also from these ITIs, so that gave us a very good hold on what we want to deliver, how it is impacting our productivity. So they started feeling a part of the organization. So it was like, earn while you learn kind of a thing. That gave them a lot of encouragement, and the word spread. So as a part of our social service, what we started doing is our employees started going and spreading it to the nearby villages, saying that, hey, this kind of a program exists, and why don't you enroll yourself to one of these institutions, be it the ITI, and we are sure that we are going to employ you. And when we were doing this, we got a lot of overwhelming response where we said, hey, stop. So we have finished our quota for the year. So that is the kind of the response we got. And we saw that this kind of a thing directly hit our productivity as well. It was a very, very good outcome. So in the long run, they wanted to be converted into employees, because first main thing is when, there are these administrative or infrastructure that is there with each of our clients. So for the gate passes to enter the plant and all that, it is a must that you need to have a PFI and ESI, but the apprentices do not have that. So we started covering them under the medical insurance on par with the rest of the employees. That was one thing to attract talent. At the same time, even we assured our clients that they're going to be safe. So this is the kind of the impact we had when we were hiring these apprentices, and it's a huge program now for us. And when I talk about the more formalized and more intellectual piece of the work that we do, that is the shared services and the software development, which is about the 40 countries, we started identifying which are those jobs which are kind of repetitive and there is no scope of growth. So for these kind of jobs, we said, hey, is it a possibility that we can outsource these kind of jobs? And when I say by outsource, so it was more of the testing or just taking the customer support kind of a thing. So they were our extended arms. And while we were doing this, one thing that really gave us an eye opener was the COVID. So more than the social security piece of it, that is the PFI, ESI, these kind of things, we started enrolling them into our health insurance schemes. That helped us more, and then of course the government is working towards, how do we formalize the sector? So we are getting more clues to see how we can make that piece of it. And the sustenance of any business is going to be more, on the innovation piece of it. The innovation we were talking to about these kind of gigs who were like too intellectual and they did not want to stick to one kind of a job, but they could definitely make an impact, and see how we could change our businesses. So we started talking to these kind of experts who are there in the market, and we started outsourcing a part of our innovation to them. And that also was a super hit for us, and it hit our bottom line at the end. So in short, if I were to say that, yes, Apprentice has been a super duper hit for us with the combination of the CSR, where it was a win-win situation, both for, the workers as well as for the company, and also because of the government help of the CSR piece of it. And then the innovation being outsourced, that also made a huge impact to us.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thanks so much for sharing your views. So clearly, you seem to be a firm believer that better security leads to better outcomes, right? Of course, when we say better security, it doesn't necessarily just refer to government programs like PFESI, but if that is combined with, say, health insurance and also a future roadmap for those people, that if they keep performing well and they stick to you for a significant period of time, then you would consider converting them into firm employees as well. So security with a future roadmap is something that will definitely lead to firm outcomes. This is something that you believe in and have seen as well. Am I right in my understanding of that?
Perfect. That's correct, Bala.
All right, great. Thanks so much once again for sharing your views on that. Now, so moving on to the second question for the panelists here. So the future of work, as we all know, is reinventing. How is driving a more formalized workforce enabling productive outcomes? So this is basically the crux of today's discussion, essentially. I mean, is there a direct correlation between formalization and productivity? Yeah. So once again, Manas sir, I want to go to you for your opinions on this.
Bala, it does. To answer your question, definitely a more formal workforce contribute to productivity, efficiency, etc. Having said that, let me tell you, I think the fundamental question we as employers need to ask ourselves is, are we looking at a formalization of workforce as a cost-saving initiative, or are we looking at as an inclusive agenda, for driving efficiency and productivity, etc. If we are looking at it as an inclusive agenda to formalize workforce, then I think they can be productive. Let me tell you, I think the previous speaker spoke about it. What are the good practices, how to actually make them as part of an inclusive agenda. So I will not touch upon that. Having said that, if you look at the why, how can they be productive? Let me touch upon that. Firstly, they need to feel part of the system. That's very important. And how do you make part of the system? The previous speaker touched about it in terms of how do you bring them into the social security net. Most importantly, I think one area which you need to focus upon is in terms of skill building. That's very important. Today, if you look at these informal workforce, they don't have any skill certification. Very few, I think. I think if you can, there are companies which we are also working towards that direction in terms of giving them a badge, in terms of a skill badge, so that they can have a certification in terms of particular skill set. For example, let me take an example of an ITI technician. The pass out of ITI, he spends about a couple of years as an apprentice in your system or as a NEET trainee in your system. So you can give them a skill badge. and they can be very productive, let me tell you. And I think, by the way, let me tell you, we also have taken almost about 20% of these people when we hired them as apprentice or named trainees after giving them a due break. We have actually absorbed them in our frontline roles, so that has really helped them in terms of increasing our productivity, because they're skilled workforce for us. We have invested on them, and then they have really helped us in terms of achieving our desired level of efficiency and productivity. The second part of the thing is that you need to treat them with fairness, dignity, and respect. I think these set of people, that's what I mean by inclusive agenda. So the previous speaker spoke about how can you give them an insurance plan. There are a lot of, let me share an example of a technician who actually is part of a customer support team and who caters to the remote areas of Northeast, let's say. He does extensive traveling, and I don't have a formal employee-employer relationship with him. For me, he's a gig worker, and then what I do is basically, we need to provide them sort of a, accidental insurance plan or a life insurance cover or for all these things, so that he feels belonged. He feels part of the system. That's another important area. So social security, the benefits, Rajesh spoke about the Ayushman Bharat scheme or the SIC plan. All said and done, we have wonderful schemes, but then it has its merits and demerits. It has its challenges in terms of implementing. So how we can actually, from an employer perspective, in terms of giving them those kind of benefits which replaces these, or at least it supplements these kind of government initiatives, is certainly going to be helpful. So, they can be productive, to answer your question, provided they feel belonged, they feel part of the system, and they can really do wonders, let me tell you. The other part which I need to touch upon quickly, Bala, is in next 1 minute, is in terms of the white collar workforce in the gig economy. I think we didn't talk much about it. I think while gig workers are not, they're not blue collar workers, or blue collar technicians, they're also white collar. For example, typical functions like MIS or data science or things like that, you have got a lot of qualified professionals who are ready to freelance. And the organizations need to innovate in terms of, need to find a way in terms of making them part of the system. And I think we have started this journey, of course, on a very small scale, let me tell you. And it has its own advantages, because you don't need the person to be exactly working from your on-site. You can actually, someone working from home or working from anywhere, he can actually contribute for 3 or 4 hours in a day. And typically think about, there are a lot of ladies who want to have a good work-life balance, and I think they're superb. Like they can contribute to the system. So those are the kind of jobs which Vani spoke about, in terms of, we need to, as an organization, we need to identify those jobs which are not repetitive in nature, and which can be done by these gig workers and or gig professionals, let me call them, as that would be a more respectable word to use. And I think they are the ones who they can actually give their things. And then, so fundamentally, organizations should not look at it as only a cost saving or a cost optimization initiative, or as a CSR initiative. Those are the things which are given. I think we need to make them belong to the system. And and as I said at the beginning, if you're 25% of your workforce by 2030 is going to be gig workers, certainly you need to better start from today in terms of how do you bring them and make them part of your system.
Great, sir. I mean, it's wonderful to see this optimism from your side that, of course, formalization will definitely lead to productive outcomes. Just that we have to make them feel like they belong, and we should make them feel like, they are a part of the system, they are part of the journey, and not really just, being sidelined, or that they are treated as second-class citizens. I mean, that's a great point, and thank you so much for emphasizing.
Bala, sorry to just interject. One more point I may have missed out. We all have seen it in post-COVID lockdown period in the 2020, in the first wave. There's a huge amount of employment loss. And I think most of these people, those who went through the employment laws, those are the gig workers that time, Of course, our company, a company like us, we, as Vani spoke about, we didn't retrench anyone during that period because we said that, 2 months is not the end of the world. We will definitely wait for a better tomorrow. But then we paid all the salaries, etc. But having said that, most of the people lost their jobs during this period were the gig workers. And imagine if they would have a safety net system, they would have an insurance, etc. And I think or kind of a line of credit, for example. Those are the things which organizations need to invest on going forward to make them more secure, to become more productive.
Absolutely. I think, as you rightly said earlier as well, we also need to try and see how well we can supplement government programs which are already there. And those are the initiatives that organizations should look at. Wonderful, sir. Thanks so much once again for sharing your views on productivity and how it's related to formalization. Rajesh ji, the same question to you as well. What is your views on whether formalization can lead to better outcomes, that is better productivity?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And I do echo most of the points which Mr. Manas has explained. So formalization definitely brings a sense of stability and steadiness in the eyes of any gig worker. Okay, and hence you're not jumpy to see where my next better opportunity lies to maximize that part of it. So that is definitely given that it will definitely add to the stability. And if you have a stable workforce, then it by and large a productive workforce. Okay, there is a downside of a stable workforce as well, is that it sometimes leads to getting into a comfort zone, a little bit of unionism sets in, and then you try to secure things without putting the corresponding effort. So there is a certain element of downside as well of an overstable workforce on that. And if you recall the unfortunate incident of Maruti, right, where that violence happened in their Manasar plant, was as simple as that. It was related to Equal Remuneration Act. Right? It was saying that if I'm doing the same job, why are you giving me a different wage? No, because just because I come from a third party, you're making that change on that. So those normalizations should happen. Those normalizations should happen. Then there is definitely a stability in that workforce, because that's where the aspiration, as Madam has also mentioned, that they aspire to become a full-time employee, because they see that is there while they're executing the same level of job. Right? So that normalization, as in West, even if you're a contract worker, it's like equal remuneration or equal pay for equal job which you do on that. So that's another phase which we'll have to see to it, that we pay for the effort or the output which you bring in, and not because you're from a third party or you're from a lesser known college or you don't have a form, whatever on that. That, if normalized, will add to the tremendous amount of stability on that. Typically, sometimes employers have also, I'd say, took advantage of this model, because that they see it as a flexible workforce, that I can increase or decrease the workforce without having the risk of dealing with the retrenchment or agitation by workers and so on and so forth, which is right. But the right to closure, which the number has gone up to 300 and so on and so forth, because that's the part of the business cycle, that it will happen, that no industry will always be an upswing at all point of time. But if it is normalized, and if they see that everything is happening and which is fair and consistent, then people don't crib. And if there is an adequate social security built on that, so even if there's a temporary job loss, people tend to sustain that because they understand that this is what that happened. So those are the structural reform, I would say, which is required to do that. So we will have those situations that we assume that if you're from unorganized sector, I can pay you less and get away with it, not give you this formal benefit, because there's a desperation of job from the worker side as well. So those alimonies, if removed in a graded manner, it will definitely bring in more. We will have to incur higher costs to begin with, but over the period, it will just stabilize on that part. So that journey has to start. It has started in some way, but much more effort is required, not only by employers, but even by the government and the regulators to bring that efficiency in those implementation thing will be of great help to us.
Absolutely agree with you, sir, on this. And, just to add to that, some of the employers do come to us as well, openly saying that they can get the same job done with people on their core payroll, but then they will cost 3 times more than someone whom they could hire through a third party on contract, on a fixed term contract or any other model like that. So that mindset definitely has to change, and I'm fully in sync with you on this. And as you said, in the short term, it could lead to a higher cost in the short term, but eventually when you're able to balance it out where you pay more for outcomes than for just the kind of nature of employment model that the person is under, which is unfortunate, then it will stabilize over a period of time. And I think this point that you made is very much in sync with the point that you made for the previous question as well, as to how social infra should keep up with the changing needs of people. So governments and policy reform should also ensure that they are able to account for and accommodate structural reforms in order to be able to do this. Thanks so much once again for sharing your views on this, sir. So we'll move on to Ms. Vani on this. So same question, ma'am. So how do you think, or do you firstly think formalization can lead to better productivity? And if yes, why?
I think it's a universal answer. It is yes. Yeah. So formalization of the workforce, I think, it is something that is written in black and white and something which is not written. So in black and white, hey, these are the social security coverages and all that. But the other thing is, as Manas was mentioning, it is more of a sense of belonging. So what we have observed, when we start looking at our workforce, saying that, which contract works well on the quality piece of it and all that. So we realized that how we treat our people is the differentiator. So when we talk to them, when we are investing in their skill development, so there have been a large percentage of our workforce who claim that they are working for Harsco and not the middleman from whom actually they are getting their salaries. So that was a differentiator for us, and it made us feel really proud. But at the same time, we took a back seat. Hey, it should not hit us in the wrong way in future. So that is a kind of pride they had. And also today we are well known in the market. It is our USP is the safety of our employees, and safety at all levels, irrespective of whether it's a gig worker, it is a blue collared or a contractor or our staff. Everybody is treated equally on the safety piece of it. So there is zero tolerance to that, and we really literally live by it. And there have been a lot of our, reward programs, recognition programs also around this safety. So they have seen how is it that, the other contractors are being treated in the same plant vis-a-vis, our contract employees. So that was a difference. So when I talk about formalizing, this workforce, I mean, it is not only, what we are giving them as a social security and the other things, but also how we treat them, how we invest them, be it in their safety, be it in the safety of the families, be it how we develop them. Be it how we extend kind of a social help to their family members, be it in their studies. So how is it that there is a direct linkage in the productivity and performance vis-a-vis what is the benefit further they are getting from the employer? So this is one thing that we have done. And the other thing is, for our white collar workforce. So I have seen, because in these 2 decades of my experience, it has been predominantly the IT, and 1/4 of it is into the manufacturing sector. So in the IT, I've come across a lot of my, ex-colleagues whom I've hired directly from the campuses. And they are like, it is like they want to work for 6 months, then explore their lives for the next 6 months. So that is very predominant. And 60% of our workforce today are these millennials who the basic need, the roti kapda makan, is done by their previous generation. And now they want to focus on exploring. So that is the reason, make money. And I think we need to leverage on this kind of a situation that is prevailing. So that is where, the gig workforce also, when we say they are productive, hey, this is what you need to, and give them those projects and the outcomes, and then let them go. That is going to be benefit for both of us. So that's where I think productivity will be a big thing when we formalize this kind of, and also, the unanswered question is how we are going to address these kind of gig workers when they work for multiple organizations, because there are the security issues, the trade secrets, and then also the social security. How are you going to manage it from the government point of view? This is something, we need to be wary about. Yeah.
No, absolutely, ma'am. Seriously, and I think that's a very important thing that we all need to understand about the current workforce, right? Over the last few years, that's been coming into the employment framework. That for them, it's not about needs; it's about wants. It's about exploring the world, exploring themselves, and they don't really need to worry about roti kapda makan, as you rightly said. And we need to be cognizant about those changing needs and cater to their evolving needs accordingly. And as you rightly said, the unanswered question of how do we manage a very large gig workforce potentially in the future, which could be simultaneously working for multiple organizations? We don't have answers to that, but I'm pretty sure recognizing the right problem is the first step to identifying the right solution. So as long as senior leaders like you are focused on the right problems, the solution will eventually come in. I'm not too worried about that. So thanks so much for sharing your views on that. And I can also see that Mr. Umesh Kulkarni has joined us. Thanks for joining us, sir. So Mr. Umesh Kulkarni has joined us, and he is the head HR at Virbac Animal Health, and he's been, he has over 20 years of experience as an HR generalist across healthcare, fine chemicals, and manufacturing across many industries. His key learning has been in the areas of driving HR strategy in alignment with business requirements, building performance culture and leadership development, talent management, managing change and transition, innovative employee engagement initiatives, and using process improvements for HR and operational efficiency. Thanks so much for joining us, sir. So if you could chip in again on the same question, what is your views on whether formalization can improve productivity or outcomes or not?
Thanks, Bola. And sorry, the panelists, for I'm not been there initial few minutes. But this particular subject is very close to my heart because I'm working on this particular area, and Bala knows it particularly for last 15 years, in fact. Especially in the animal health sector, we deal with all B, C, and D level villages. And today we see the requirement of talent. So one side there is a talent crunch, and other side of the story is that lot of employable candidates or students are available, and more and more if you go to maybe B and C level cities, you will find that most of the BSc agrees or BScs or for that sake even the normal graduates, they are looking out for their career path or future path. So we at an organization, I can put that we work with this kind of B level, C level cities, and a lot of employment we have been offering. So of course, my experience is that if we make them as an inclusive kind of thing, which I think most of the panelists have already told, something comes that during this pandemic also, like 2020 and 2021, we haven't stopped any kind of recruitment. I think especially we drived, and whatever employees who have been working from maybe a I would say that third party or maybe other areas. In fact, we have taken an initiative and we recruited close to 200 employees over a period of 2020 and 2021. Apart from this, when we think about those informal workforce, basically they look out for a safety, security, which everybody has been talking about. But as an organization, probably we need to look at what is best we can give them. Something like there was a situation of COVID. I think everybody talked about insurance, but when it comes to all such kind of employees where no admission was available, I think we as an organization, we thought of a COVID coverage to them, wherein a 14 days quarantine period, they can really stay back at the home and take the benefit of the insurance. Rather than benefit, I would say it's a small money for them, even it's a 40,000-50,000 rupees of a cost, but it makes a big difference for them. So can we pass it on that benefit to them? Apart from that, in case of any recognition and rewards, can we make at par with the rest of the employees? And all such kind of small things where they can really feel the belongingness to the organization. And apart from that, can you be in touch with them in case of any need? Open culture where a guy from maybe a northeast, and in case he has any query, question, anything, is leadership accessible to him? Because that is the main point. Because when we when we talk about a lot of things, I think small things, very small things, they expect very small things. But if there is no leadership accessibility, HR is not accessible, and then we only see them in a view that they have been part of the organization, but do we really look after them? So I think these are the small points which are very important, and a lot of learnings in last 2 years of time, where how we can, for example, there is a birthday for that particular individual employee. We have started with the process that can I offer him 1,000 rupees of gift voucher as a gesture from an organization, which can be fulfilling his need, that he can use that gift voucher for his birthday celebration. He can go along with the family and have the food. So these are the small things which probably we all as an HR leader, we can look into it, which can really help in terms of helping this workforce, which can really feel proud. And all these small things will really help in terms of the loyalty, and of course it will lead to the productivity part of it. So these are the few areas which I want to touch upon, which I have practically implemented with my organization, and I wish that if every organization can think of these small things and help this all workforce, which can lead to the greater productivity.
Well said, sir. Thank you so much. And I know personally that though you are the HR head of Virbac, but even a new joinee contract employee who's 21 years old can still directly approach you. So the point that you mentioned that leadership should be accessible is something that you are living by. So I'm aware of that, and thanks so much for sharing your views loud and clearly in this forum as well. So, yeah, so in the interest of time, while I had a couple of questions, I just wanted to combine those questions. Essentially, formalization, now we're all on the same page that it definitely could lead to more productive outcomes. But is this a wicked challenge for firms to handle? That is the implementation of formalization, especially complex organizations which have a layered distribution network. And how does one strike the right balance in this kind of a framework? And how do you see the composition of people, process, and technology evolving to support more formal employment? So it's like I said, it's a pretty expanded question, but it's more to do with how do we implement formalization successfully with the combination of people, process, technology in the ecosystem in complex organizations, in short, right? So Manashji, once again, I'd like to go to you first.
All right. So quickly, because I need to have a hard stop at about 12:10. So I think most of the your answer to the question that you have just posed, I think we spoke about it at length for last 45 minutes or so. First, as far as people are concerned, I think we need to have a change in mindset. That's number one. We need because that's the reality. The reality is that about close to as I said, about 90 million of the workforce are going to be gig workforce. So I think organizations cannot wish them away going forward. They need to be part of your scheme of things in the composition of workforce. That's very important. That's what I mean by mindset. Second, when you talk about processes, I think we have well-defined processes as far as formal workforce are concerned. So I think some of those processes need to be extended to the informal segment. That's very important. May not be all, but I think as the previous speaker spoke about reward recognition, the safety, the social security net, all these things we need to strengthen as a process so that they feel belong, they feel inclusive as part of the core system to become productive. Third, technology. I think since you spoke about technology, Bala, let me tell you, I think we need to devise a mechanism. In fact, in our organization, all these gig workers are part of our the tech-enabled system as far as their attendance management, the leave administration, or for that matter, the insurance processing, etc. All that is being part of there. But I think we need to leverage the technology in terms of making them as part of this inclusive agenda. So there's many more. It's an evolving model. I can tell you that there's while we have leveraged these three pillars: people, process, technology, to make our formal workforce belong. I don't see any reason why we can't make the informal workforce belong. Having said that, only one additional point. We need to have more engagement with the government, the legislation, etc. I think that's an area which we need to focus going forward, to influence upon them, to have policies and systems from their side also, from the government side, which will make this transition very successful.
All right, sir, completely agree with you. And thanks so much once again for joining us and enlightening us with your views. Rajesh ji, same question to you as well. So how wicked is this problem, especially in complex organizations, and how are we going to use the combination of people, process, and technology to better drive this process of formalization?
So very, very quickly, because we have overshot our time. See, it's not possible for organizations to individually create infrastructure. Okay, the good part is the government is well-intentioned and has come out with very good programs. It's all about exploiting and leveraging this. To give you an example of all the plethora of schemes which the government has, the DBT, direct benefit transfer, is the one which is the maximum hit, right? Now, why is it hit? Why do everyone prefers to open a bank account under Jan Dhan Yojana? Because they know that the benefit will come to my bank and I can withdraw and take advantage of that. So similarly, if that part is made as a movement, a mission mode kind of thing, and people are made aware that if you are part of these schemes, these are the benefits which will accrue to you. And earlier, because we were a developing economy and there were large scale exploitation, lots of responsibility was given on the employer, that even if you do a salary, the TDS is on the employer. But many developed economies don't do TDS. They say it's your responsibility to go and pay taxes as a responsible employer. That has to shift. And while employer will do their job, but if that awareness and education is there, people will start taking advantage of the various schemes which is there. And DBT is a case in point, which everyone is willing to take because they see a clear benefit happening on month basis on that.
Oh, sir, I completely agree with you that direct benefit transfer, that is DBT, is the way to go. And through Jan Dhan Yojana, if we have been able to create crores, literally crores of new bank accounts, then why can't we go on mission more and do the same for socializing all of these benefits that people could get through formalization? Wonderfully put, sir. Thank you so much for that. And moving on to Ms. Vani. So again, same question, ma'am. So how do we tackle this problem by utilizing the combination of people, process, and technology to drive formalization in a better way?
So, we say with power comes accountability. And today, if you say where the power rests, it's only with the data. So that's a big thing. And data is controlled by technology. So all said and done, the people, the process, and the technology cannot work in silos. They have to work in a very integrated way. So given that it is, what we feed into the technology, it is controlled by the people. And people can do that only through a process. Because what you want from the technology, how do you want to use the tools and all that, it depends upon the functional expertise and not a technical expertise as such. So when we were doing, hey, what are the kind of reports, what is the kind of awareness that we need to have, information about our people and all that. So the functional experts, we were working very closely with our technology. And given that, what are the kind of people that are there available in our organization, be it at the supervisory level, be it at the managerial level. So what were the kind of layers? So what are the kind of people that they are managing? So is there a kind of, difference in what their subordinates are doing vis-a-vis what they are doing? So are they specialized or are they generalized? So while we were talking about, a couple of, at least half a decade back, we were talking more about these specialists who are going to rule the corporates and all that. But today it's going to be a combination of these generalists and the specialists. The generalists managing all these specialists differently. That's where they will add value. So these kind of things, we got the information from, the tools that we were using internally. That gave us an advantage to formalize. And also, yes, it has been very harsh, especially on the leadership. And when I say it has been harsh only because, there are certain layers which we had to let go, and this kind of a thing, I think even government is helping us, where slowly there is a transition that is happening, between the formalized and the informalized workforce. For example, even a lot of government organizations, they do not have their retiral benefits, that they do not get the pensions anymore. So slowly that gap, it is lessening, and that is definitely going to help. So this is how probably, we can leverage on the technology piece of it.
Sir, if we can quickly have your views on how we can use people, process and technology to better implement formalization.
I think people, process, technology, the topic, particularly again, it's an independent topic again, of course. But I think in order to work on this particular area, I think some kind of a policy guidelines or some kind of maybe a directives which can help maybe an organization, maybe at individual organization level, which we can work upon. But of course, what other panelists have said, I agree to that maybe a centralized system wherein some kind of a database or some kind of a details which can be helpful for most of the organization, which can give a directives that at least we know that what direction we are going. So today we are in a black dark box that what is happening, where happening, and how it is happening, it is not there. But some kind of a formalized system can really help the organization, or maybe an organization can start working upon those areas, and it can help in the big way.
Sir, great. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for all 4 of you elite panelists for joining us today. And I'm really sorry for having taken about 11 minutes more of your time than we should have. But truly appreciate having you on board and sharing your wonderful views on the subject matter. It's clear that we're all on the same page that formalization will definitely lead to better outcomes and better productivity for the organization. The question is more about how we go about smartly implementing it. Thank you so much once again for your time. Truly appreciate it. Have a great day ahead, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.